Hi, I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be reviewing Winter by Marissa Meyer. This is the fourth and final book in the Lunar Chronicles series, so if you're all caught up on all the Lunar Chronicles books, stay and join me in talking about this, and if you're not, go read them, then come back and watch this video. So this book was really long, first of all. It was over 800 pages, and then it felt really long because there were so many different plot threads to wrap up and different story arcs that had to be completed. So I didn't read this quite as fast as I read the other Lunar Chronicles books just because it felt like so much to take in. So this is billed as being, the Snow White retelling in the series. And, it has the apple on the cover and it's supposedly Winter's story. But, Winter felt to me like just kind of one little plot line going through it. If I had to say the overarching feel of this book, it felt kind of like it was a Hunger Games retelling. Because there was a whole revolution going on, and Cinder was busy trying to get things stirred up and get herself crowned queen, and so I really felt like this was more Cinder's book than Winter's. And Winter did have definite, she had a little story arc going on, but you almost could have cut that out and made it its own story, because the overall point of the book was that this is the one where Cinder has her revolution. So one of the side effects of it being such a long book with so many different things going on was that it felt like there were a bunch of different stories. So it felt like there were 4 or 5 different stories all stacked throughout this, and they just kind of wove together. And you could have, if you wanted to, cut those out and made each one its own little story, but we string them all together and kind of weave them together to make one long story. And mostly, even though this was really long, it wasn't too hard to read. The most confusing thing for me, though, was that we have so many different protagonists now and so many different points of view, and it's hard to keep track of who is actually telling the story. So you'd start a scene, and it would be from one person's point of view, and by the end of the scene, someone else was telling the story. And because our 4 leads are all teenage girls, and they all have love interests bobbing around, and it would be saying, oh, Cinder did this, and then Scarlet did this, and then Winter did this, and she felt so excited about that, and you don't know who they're talking about. It's a little confusing trying to figure out which she was worrying about which him. So that was a little bit confusing to me, and I would have liked it if they didn't jump perspective quite so much, or if they made it a little bit more clear who was sort of narrating at that moment in time. So I really did like the Winter Snow White elements of this story. After reading Cress, I was a little concerned. I didn't know if Winter would be too annoying of a character to have narrate, but it turns out that she was amazing. And she was losing her mind a little bit. She did have all these side effects from not using her lunar gift, but she exaggerated that so much to get her way. And she was a little crazy, but she had a handle on it. And she still knew where she was. She could still get things done. And she could do basically anything and just say, oh, I'm Crazy Winter. So I love the scene where Cress was hiding and Winter wants to go save her. She's like, oh, look at the pretty boxes. Did someone bring me a present? And no one questions it at all. She can do basically whatever she wants because people think she's insane and lost her mind, and that gives her a license to get away with so much and to just undermine Lavanis so much. And I loved seeing a character like that, who she wasn't directly confrontational. She didn't have, all these amazing fighting powers or anything like that, but she had this very subtle way of doing what needed to be done and helping a lot of people and really working against Lavanna, and that was so cool. It was also fun seeing Winter's relationship with Jason, and we didn't get to see it start, so the other 3 books have had couples meet and you get to kind of see them, but this one, their relationship is already established before the book, so you just kind of get to see them sort of the end half of their relationship, and that was of their relationship becoming a thing, and that was really cool. The only thing I didn't like about that was you don't really get to see a resolution to that. By the end, they're flying around and rescue, everyone has their missions. They're going off on their different quests or whatever. But you never really got this scene where Winter and Jason talked about their relationship and decided, okay, we are going to date now. We're not going to try to do the whole friends thing. Because, it was always a thing where Winter wanted to date Jason, but he was keeping her at a distance kind of to protect her and kind of because he didn't think he was good enough for her, all these different reasons. But then they never talked about that, and there was never something where he acknowledged, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I kind of wish we could have had that. I really liked how they worked all the Snow White elements into the story. They had the evil queen tell her servant that he needed to murder the Snow White character, and he did fake it really well in front of the cameras. I didn't understand why it had to be Ryu, the wolf, whose name I can't pronounce, though, because they were in a menagerie full of animals, and Ryu was the only one we had any kind of emotional attachment to or knew anything about. And why did he have to pick that cage? Couldn't he have picked a different cage? And I don't know, maybe Winter was attached to all the animals, and it's just that was the only one that Scarlet knew, but I still wish we could have just picked a different one. I didn't know why it had to be the wolf. The apple candies were great, and it made sense that, oh, they actually managed to present it in such a way that a little old lady did walk up to Winter and say, here, take this apple and eat it. And she would want to take it from the little old lady because she thought it was from Jason, and it made sense that he would have given it to her because she loved those candies. And then it did have, it didn't put her to sleep like in the fairy tale, but it had plague in it, so yay, I guess. One of the main things about Snow White is you picture her going to the dwarves' house and cleaning and all this stuff, and they managed to work that in really well because Winter's kind of bouts of mental unstableness were strongest when she wasn't doing anything, so the whole time they were staying at Wolf's house, she was cleaning and stuff to stay busy, and so it actually worked really well. It made sense for her character to be doing that, to be doing all this cleaning and stuff and keeping the house nice and gorgeous. And it still tied into the fairy tale, so I thought that was really fun. Then the life support tanks were great. They brought that up at the beginning, early on in the book that life support tanks exist. And then they put Winter in one, and that was just great, because it's like the glass coffin thing we're used to seeing. And they even had they had her so beloved by the people that it made sense for her to be out and visible. And that was just so cute, and I really liked that. And it was a great little thing, and her prince did come and save her, even though it was with, an antidote instead of a kiss, but, it makes a lot more sense that way. So it was so much fun to see, when this book starts out, Scarlet is already in captivity, and it was fun to see her bond with Ryu, because, she has a strong connection to wolves, and so it was fun to see that, and then see her, break out of jail with Winter. And when she finally was reunited with Wolf, I was looking forward to that so much, because we spent the whole last book with Wolf miserable and pining and useless, and Scarlet not really in it. And it was so great when Scarlet and Winter were there in the streets, and you had that whole scene where Wolf smells her and just darts out the door from blocks away and goes running to see her, and then he ran up to Winter because she was wearing Scarlet's coat, and it was just so cute. That scene was just so great, and I loved it so much. Cress and Thorn were really cute. I didn't like them as much as I thought I would in the last book, because Thorn's personality was so different around Cress than it had been in the book Scarlet. But I kind of have adjusted to that at this point, and they were very cute together. It was fun to see them both thinking, it was the very classical angsty young adult thing of, oh, I think he doesn't like me, well, oh, I think she doesn't like me. And then that final scene at the ball was so cute, where they had the whole misunderstanding, and the girl made herself look like Cress, and it was just so cute. It was the most adorable little scene, and I loved it that we're in the middle of this high-stakes operation, there's all this stuff going on, but there's still time for them to, go sneak off to the room, all this different stuff, there's time for all the drama to fit in there, so that was fun. I thought it was funny. Basically, Cress is so good at hiding. It was hilarious. Just, she always kept getting separated from other people, and she would just squirrel herself away wherever she was, and find a control panel or something, and start wiring her way into fixing it, and that was just so funny. So basically Cinder was the main character of this novel, even though it has Winter's name on it. And, you know, she had her revolution, and they had a actually decent plan for getting the message out there, you know, projecting all that stuff. Though, when she stood on the edge of the fountain, I could not believe she would do that, because there are cameras everywhere. Her glamour does not work on cameras, and she's not using it anyway. And they're the most wanted people in the entire country. And she decides, oh, I'm going to stand up on a fountain and give a speech, because that's not obvious, and it's not like they'll track me down that way. So I don't know what she was thinking. But then it kind of worked out all right that she got captured, because then we had the awesome scene after Kai's wedding. So the whole time, you know, the wedding was told in such slow motion and so agonizing that you're half expecting someone to come bursting in and break it up like they did last time, but no, you have to sit through the whole thing, and then you've gone through so much dread and you can't believe it's actually happened, and they haul Cinder in and you're thinking things can only get worse. And basically Cinder causes such complete chaos and breaks free and dives into the lake, and it was just amazing, that whole scene where there was this room full of people versus her, and she just completely made them look like idiots, and it was so funny. So I thought the whole running thing of the wire cutters was so cute. And then when Cinder was finally on trial, and you know, like, it's her turn to talk and try to defend herself, and all she does is say, wire cutters. And it was just the cutest thing. That was very great. I loved it so much. So I didn't understand, when they first snuck onto the moon, they came on in Kai's ship, which was convenient, but why would they do that? Because it makes Kai look so guilty, and they could have come up with so many other ways. I mean, Cinder is a very powerful lunar surrounded by all these earthens. It'd be so easy to just manipulate someone into letting her onto their ship, and then they could have just gone with someone who didn't know anything, and it would have been way more believable to say they didn't know anything, because of course Kai knew something. It didn't make any sense, and they could have been so much more subtle about it than they really were. And of course, you know, Levana's staff was waiting to raid Kai's ship, because that's the most obvious one. If they had just come on in some basic, like, catering ship, or just general delegation of some boring country that was not super politically active, then they could have snuck on so much easier, and things would have just gone so much more smooth for them. So I had a couple of questions about their problems. So, you know, at the end, after Cinder has jumped into the water, her lied truth manipulation detector thing isn't working anymore. And so why isn't manipulation a problem for her? During all that final battle scene, she's still in charge, she's still doing all this stuff, and the only reason she was the one that was so in the front before was because she knew when manipulation was happening. So I didn't get why they would trust her. Why, like, Aiko should have been in charge or glued to her side and been like, okay, that is wrong, like, we need to watch this stuff. And I was so dreading something happening, and nothing did, and I didn't know why the Lunars didn't take advantage of that, and why they didn't try to manipulate her more, because that would have been the first lunar instinct, you'd think, to try to manipulate people. I don't know why they didn't do it more. I also don't understand what happened to the cameras, because in the first half of the book, security was a huge issue. You know, Jason had to fake murder Winter in front of the cameras to make it look realistic, and then Cress had to stay behind to disrupt the cameras while Scarlet and Winter escaped, and all this stuff. Cameras were a huge issue. And then after the battle, you know, they're having the main battle to take over, and Cress and Thorn are trying to sneak in, and cameras aren't an issue. Glamours don't work on cameras, and no one's using glamours anyway, and they're just waltzing around, you know, Cress is wandering around the palace, and suddenly cameras aren't an issue at all. You know, she's trying to sneak around, and supposedly this place is like a fortress with cameras everywhere, and it's just not an issue, and no one catches her, and I didn't know why. So the final battle was very long and dramatic. It was interesting that after all this, Cinder says that she can just not be it sounds like her whole plan is to really not be the ruler anymore, and to just go to Earth and be Empress with Kai, and it seems like it would be a bit more complicated than that. Like, I don't really picture it being that easy to convince a society that's used to monarchs and that's always had manipulation going on to just do this. And, you know, they have the new technology to do the brain implant things, but I picture that being much more of a popular thing on Earth than on Luna, because people don't like change, and the Lunars are all used to their gifts, and they wouldn't want to have them disabled. I also didn't understand, you know, so we've gone through all this, we've dethroned Levana, and then Cinder comes up to this meeting of countries, and it's going to be this negotiation thing. And the first thing she does is say, okay, I have some requests. They're not demands, they're requests, but I did just save your planet, remember? And so, you over there are going to pardon some criminals, and you over there are going to change, you know, you're going to do a whole civil rights thing and welcome cyborgs as real people. And I know this will be controversial and you'll have, like, governments to look back to, but no, just do what I say. And all these countries just agree to these demands she gives out. And it doesn't make any sense to me, because she's asking them to rewrite laws in their own countries. And it, you know, based on what we saw in the first book, Earthens are very prejudiced against cyborgs. And yes, Kai is the Emperor, but that's going to be a really difficult thing. And since Kai is the Emperor, he was going to change the laws anyway. You know, he was trying to, Kai was a very good politician, and he would be much better at kind of subtly encouraging people to change the laws, instead of Cinder just saying, okay, change the law now. I'm the queen of another country, but I'm going to make you change your country's laws. You know, it's going to be different than last time. Luna's not going to make demands, but So I thought it was interesting how well that was received when she was acting a lot like Levana in that scene. We also didn't get any resolution, really, on what's going to happen with the shells. You know, like, are they going to come up with some kind of a payment program? Will they pay the shells ridiculous amounts of money to donate blood and try to get them to volunteer that way? How are they going to wake them all up from their comas? Are they going to send them back to their families or have some kind of a rehabilitation program? They didn't really talk about any of that, or what's going to happen to all the shells. So I would be intrigued to know more about that. Maybe it's something they'll cover in the short stories. I know that there's the book Stars Above is supposed to be a bunch of different short stories, so I'm hoping they resolve more in that. Oh, this was a little thing, but it bugged me a lot. So when Scarlet and Winter are sneaking through the tunnels trying to find the wolf packs, they find a sign on the door. And the sign on the door says, Lunar Regiment 117, packs 1009 through 1020. And they keep referring to that as 11 packs. Okay, so if the sign says that it's packs 1009 through 1020, you would think that would include 1009, and it would include 1020. Like, you wouldn't say packs 1009 through 1020 if 1009 was really over on the other end of the hall. So we have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That is 12 packs, and several times they refer to it as 11. Like, the thaumaturges came in and they were talking about 11 packs, and like several times they mentioned that there were 11 packs, and that does not add up to 11. And it's a little thing, but it just bugged me a lot, and I don't know what was happening. Was there some kind of a glitch? Like, are Lunars, like, I don't know, are they really superstitious and they skipped number 13? Like, what was going on? Why were they referring to it as 11 when there should really, really, really be 12 packs? I don't understand. Oh, another thing for, you know, I'm betting that one of the short stories has to be about Aiko and Kenny, because they had such great chemistry. They had the thing where, oh, they first meet, and Aiko thinks he's attractive, but then they don't like each other, and he hates her because she is just a robot, or she is just an android. And, you know, they had such great chemistry. They're going to be thrown together a lot, and one of the short stories has to be about them, and they have to become a couple because they were just too cute not to. So overall, I really liked this book. It had a lot of different storylines to wrap up, and I think it did a pretty good job of that. There were some things that I had issues with, but mostly I really liked it. And I am going to read the Stars Above stories still, and the Fairest, which is Levana's prequel, which came out before this, but I didn't really want to read that. I wanted to know what happened, so I kind of skipped it, and I'm going to read it next. So, yeah, I enjoyed this book. It was a good conclusion, and I had a lot of fun seeing what happened to all of our characters.